I read somewhere how Christmas is built upon a beautiful and intentional paradox, that the birth of the homeless should be celebrated in every home. How about adding providing homes for the homeless or families for those yearning to be adopted? The time isn't enough and we have lots to share, so welcome to today's Jamaica Magazine. I'm Theodore Henry.
Good day, I'm Lorraine Mendez and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, December 8. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve curfews have been amended to 1 a.m. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced those and other changes to the COVID-19 containment measures during yesterday's sitting of the House of Representatives. From Friday, December 10 to Thursday, January 13, 2022, the nightly curfew starts an hour later at 10 o'clock.
How well we are able to maintain these hours really depend on how people behave. So it is not our intention to in any way deprive persons of enjoying the spirit of Christmas and enjoying the festivities of the season. But people ought to remember that the threat is still very much real, especially with a new variant that spreads rapidly.
Mr. Holness says operating hours for rivers, beaches and other water attractions have been extended until 5 p.m. To facilitate the return to full productive capacity, the mandatory work-from-home order for public sector workers will come to an end on December 31. Prime Minister Holness says individual ministries, agencies and departments of government still have the option to continue the order based on their circumstance. Protocols governing places of worship, weddings, annual general meetings and events hosted by the government remain unchanged. So too have the rules governing burials, funerals and the public gathering limit. In the meantime, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says protocols for entry into Jamaica remain in place. Persons are still required to present a negative PCR or antigen test 3 days before travel to the island. Travelers who are fully vaccinated and have opted for the PCR test will not be required to quarantine. The quarantine order remains in effect for those who have taken the antigen test, those who are partially vaccinated, and those who are unvaccinated. Mr. Holness told yesterday's Parliament that the state was reviewing the travel ban imposed on southern African countries following the discovery of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. According to the Prime Minister, health surveillance suggests that the Omicron variant is fast becoming the dominant strain in the world, so a travel ban would be pointless. As such, the island is actively preparing for a fourth wave of the virus. The Ministry of Health has provided over 250 vaccination sites, is building out field hospitals, increasing bed capacity, procuring oxygen generators, and an additional genome sequencer to test for variants.
Your life is in your hands. The government is going to move to return the economy and the country to normalcy, and we are doing so with great caution and great care. But there is a limit to which the government can shield the citizens from the threat, and without creating more problems in doing that. So we are, Madam Speaker, moving steadily and surely to reopen the country. I urge all Jamaicans, therefore, to make the responsible choice to keep yourselves, your families, and your loved ones safe.
In other news, more Jamaicans will benefit from driving training opportunities following Tuesday's handover of a $5.4 billion test driving simulator. The simulator was provided by the Ministry of Transport to the Island Traffic Authority. It will be stationed at the Swallowfield Vehicle Examination Depot.
We are hoping that over time, the behavior on our roads will improve. And introducing the driving simulator into the thing now, so that once you finish the test, before you do the yard test, the inspector is going to put you on the simulator to ensure that you know how to control a vehicle.
The Transport Minister says another simulator will soon be given to a selected high school. It's aimed at introducing more Jamaicans to driving from the secondary level. Minister of Housing and Urban Renewal Pernell Charles Jr. says the National Housing Policy and the amended Rent Restriction Act will both be tabled in Parliament by March next year. The minister says the National Housing Policy and Implementation Plan is being prepared for tabling as a white paper. He says the document is in the final stages of examination by a technical review committee, after which it will be submitted to Cabinet for consideration and approval. Mr. Charles Jr. adds that amendments to the Rent Restriction Act, which seeks to strengthen the rights of landlords and tenants, is now awaiting the fifth draft bill.
The suite of policies and legislations will aid in providing the enabling framework that is critical for the improvement of the provision of adequate, safe, legal and affordable housing for all Jamaicans.
Minister Charles Jr. was speaking in the House of Representatives recently. And finally, the Bank of Jamaica, BOJ, is advising that the Jamaica $55,000 commemorative banknote being circulated is acceptable for all transactions as legal tender. The clarification comes amidst reports of persons having trouble conducting transactions with the banknote. The commemorative note bears the Jamaica 50 logo and the image of the late former Prime Minister Hugh Shearer on the front. On the back, it bears the photograph of a group of children from the Central Branch Primary School instead of the usual aerial view of Highway 2000.
The security features of a standard 5,000 note remains. That hasn't changed. So that window you have in the middle, once that window is there, and in terms of the thread in the note, once you can determine that, do not look at what is at the back of the note or the logo on the front. Those are the only two differences.
Deputy Governor of the BOJ, Natalie Haynes, says persons who are not comfortable using the notes may call the central bank and have them verified. They may also exchange it for a standard note over the counter at the BOJ. And that's it for JIS News today. I'm Lorraine Mendez. Thanks for watching.
People want are good memories to say, wow, I got this from this person and they really thought about me. So how about looking for some pictures that you have of you and that special person and packaging it nicely or putting it in a picture frame? That could make a really nice gift. Or think about what is their financial goal that they're trying to save towards. And it may be that you put a nice little card and say, hey, I'm contributing towards X because I know it means the world to you. Or look around the home. What is it that they really want? It could be something as simple as lovely pillows for a woman, right? And you may buy her a set of pillows. Look for something that means the world to that person. It doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money. It just has to show that you've put in a whole lot of heart.
Government is bringing hope right to the doors of unattached youth. We now bring you the success story of one youth who experienced the benefits of the Hope program.
I was yearning for success so much that it brought me to the wrong route. I was actually incarcerated because of my actions, and that is where I got into sewing, because I had to do something to make up for the time and to keep myself active. So this program, I heard about it as soon as I was released in May 13. So it was my ray of hope. This is my change. This is my way forward. So I come with all zeal and tenacity to go forward.
Cressy Ray is just one of the thousands of Jamaican young people whose lives are being transformed because of their engagement in the Prime Minister's Housing Opportunity, Production and Employment Hope program.
The Hope program is about engaging with the youth of Jamaica in a meaningful way. To give them, so it is mainly a training and apprenticeship program, if I can summarize that in a nutshell. It involves engaging young persons through, firstly, values and attitudes, or what I call core skills training. Then it gets into a skills training, a very basic skills training, and then get them to serve as an apprentice for up to 1 year, honing the skills that they would have learned.
And that is exactly the course taken by the Hope Garment Construction Corps at the Heart Trust NTA Garmix Academy.
The first phase was 2 weeks of what is called core skills training. Basically life skills training, different areas where they were taught life coping skills, punctuality, how to dress for work, how to manage their emotions, things like that.
I deserve the best things that life has to offer.
They were taken into the machine operating training where the 100 were placed in 4 groups of 25 with 4 instructors learning to sew. The final phase will be going into production where they will actually start making the shirts for the other persons. And you will see from the display we have over here that they're actually making shirts now.
Yes, you heard right. These students are actually making shirts for the over 15,000 participants of the Hope program.
When we started the program, the intent was to have everybody be in receipt of a shirt, Oxford type shirt, that would be to help to promote the good working ethics, including their own dress and deportment. To purchase shirts outright and to have them branded, the cost was really far too prohibitive in order to kit out the vast numbers that we're hoping to reach on the program. Then there was a suggestion to speak to Heart Garmix Academy, and I found out that they had this massive facility with over 100 machines, which were generally being underutilized at the time.
Now these young garment makers are learning much more than stitching shirts for fellow Hope participants.
I'm enjoying it right now because I can make my own shirt, skirt, and now I'm dropping to make my own dress.
It is very enlightening, astounding. I didn't know it was so meticulous to make even a simple dress. You know, we look at it as just 2 pieces of fabric, but when you get down to the nitty and gritty, it has so many different calculations, but it's something I love.
Because the clothes wasn't working out for me, I tried to do jewelry making. It's going great so far because I can make my own jewelry, I can produce it, I can have my own store and selling them.
The length is from the waist to the ground.
And none of this would be possible without the team of hard-working instructors on hand.
At first, I didn't know anything about sewing. Then, basically, getting the steps from our instructors, and they're teaching us step by step, so you get everything and understand. And at this stage where I'm at, I'm proud of myself, because if I didn't came here, I wouldn't know to do nothing at all.
The teachers, trust me, they work hard. It's not easy dealing with us as young adults, so they work hard. And what I love about them, it's not just about passing for them. It is about sitting down with the person, making sure they understand. So I give the teachers 2 thumbs up.
They help me a lot because I give them most of them problem. And there is not an instructor here who don't know me. Because I walk around and I ask questions, how to do my shirt, and they all helped me. It don't make no sense to stay home and sit down and I look for somebody to give something when you can come out, learn a skill, and can do something for yourself.
It doesn't matter what background you're from or where you're from. Just come with an open mind and willing to learn. And once you're willing, you'll go a long way because there's hope for you.
For more information on the Garment Construction Corps or the HOPE program, call or visit a National Youth Service or Heart Trust NTA office. Toll free 1-888-432-7868 or email info@heart-nta.org.
Here's the second thing that I read somewhere. Christmas is most truly Christmas when we celebrate it by giving the light of love to those who need it most. Ruth Carter Stapleton. This year, you can share the season with a child in an adoption home through the CPFSA. Here's how.
The Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, has taken steps to make the adoption process much easier. Joining me is Adoption Coordinator, Mrs. Maxine Bogelo, who will be giving us some information about the changes made. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Bogelo.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to go straight into it. What are the changes made?
Okay, before 2016, we had a two-tier system. First, applicants were asked to complete a pre-adoption form and then submit that to us. Now that would normally take some time. So we reviewed the system and said that it would be best if maybe we erase that part of the process. So now what applicants have to do is that they go straight to our website and where they will find the adoption forms. The forms include the application form, the medical form, one for the child and the applicants, and the guidelines which outline all the information and all the required documents that need to be submitted with the application form.
Awesome. And what are the required documents?
The required documents are the birth certificates, marriage certificates if they are married, job letters and income statements, references from persons who know them, not a family member. And the references should not necessarily speak only to the person being a nice or a good person, but it should speak to how would they care for a child. That should be included, their capacity to care for a child. If the child is in school, we would need a child's last school report as well.
And when all of that is completed, what's the next step?
The next step would be submit all of those to the CPFSA. When it is here now, we would review to ensure that all documents are here. Now, if all the information is there, the application is reviewed, given a number, and assigned to a caseworker. And a letter would be sent to the applicant informing them of this and who the person is. Once the caseworker gets that application, that caseworker would now start to prepare appointments to interview both the applicants, the child, and whosoever, the birth parents, because the birth parents are also very important in the process.
And what if there are no birth parents?
Well, if there are no birth parents, we would have had death certificates for the parents if they have died. If they are nowhere around or cannot be located, there are avenues that we would have to take internally to ensure that we try our best to find them.
And once that's completed, what's next?
Once that is completed, the officers then would have to do a comprehensive report. And that report would have to be compiled and then submitted to the adoption board, because the adoption board is the only agency in Jamaica that can approve adoption at that level. So after the approval, it is submitted to the adoption board and approval is given, then it is now preparation for court. Because court is where it is finalized legally.
How long does that process usually last?
The entire process? We are at now 3 to 6 months, depending on if there are no challenges.
And once you get to court, then?
Once we get to court, court is held depending on the availability by the court. Some courts have set dates, while others will have to submit our documents and await their decision as to when we can come to court. Now, once the court has signed off on those documents for adoption orders, it is the applicant's responsibility to collect those, and they will take a copy to the RGD where they will apply for the new birth certificate for the adopted child.
And is there any cost associated with any of this process?
No, adoptions are free in Jamaica.
Is there anything else that, Jamaica needs to know about the process?
We need adopters, prospective adopters, to understand that it is important that they submit all the documents, and it is also important that they are truthful in the stories that they give pertaining to how a child is placed in their care. Because what we find is that sometimes when we approach birth parents, they are not aware that this child is being adopted. They know that somebody is caring for their child, but that was not the arrangement that they adopted for. Persons generally who wish to adopt should love a child, should really want to take care of a child, because it's a lifelong investment. Persons, they should have proper accommodation for the child. They should be able to financially can afford to take care of that child. And they should be willing to accept that child as theirs. And that is very important, because we see sometimes that persons adopt for many different reasons, and this can affect the relationship of that child for the rest of their lives.
How can people reach out to you to find out or to just inquire about the adoption process?
Okay, we have an email address, adoption@childprotection.gov.jm, and our straight line to the unit is 922-1751.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bugelo.
You're welcome.
It's absolutely critical that we receive the vaccines. You will see hospitalizations and indeed deaths likely come down. And so there is a lot of value to be gained by getting as many vulnerables on board as possible. So tell your mothers, tell your aunts, listen out for yourselves if you're over 60, and take the vax, because the vax is what will help you to guard against the COVID virus, and indeed help your relatives, your friends, those who you come in contact with, for the same benefit.
Some persons are also offering help through healing. Persons like massage therapist Tamika Carruthers, who's healing through darkness. Our next feature will explain more.
Well, Tamika, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. We just want to find out a little bit more about your story and how did you get started in the profession?
It has started when I got blind, 11 years ago. I got blind from a wrong medication while I was studying nursing.
Did you feel angry at any point when you discovered that you would not have been able to see again?
Angry?
Yes.
When I was just getting blind, because I went blind within 19 days. And I remember they had to strap me to a bed because I was trying to run out of the hospital, saying, I don't want to be blind, I don't want to be blind. At the time, persons thought that blindness is the end of the world. But I was already a mother. And for me to just take this like this and take it lightly, it wasn't my thing, because I'm a fighter. I got myself rehabilitated, learning how to use a computer again without sight.
Right.
Within 3 months, I learned that at Society for the Blind. I learned how to use my cane. I was already a student at heart before, as a chef.
Yes.
So there was my next resort, to call them up and say that I'm blind. And I need them now to tell me of a profession that suits me. And they told me about massage. So when I heard that I can now be a massage therapist, I was elated.
So the transition between nursing and becoming a massage therapist, how did you make that kind of transition, and how did you feel about making the transition?
Well, it was great expectations, because then I'd have to have subjects. First, I have to have 3 CXEs. That's what they require. So I went ahead and I did CXEs, 7 of them.
Absolutely.
In which I got 1s and 2.
Yes.
And then I started the massage course. It was 2 years. It was very challenging because we have to get reader writers, because now I cannot read for myself. But from the day I started practical, wow.
That was the life-changing moment for you.
Yes, I know now that I can now use my hands and at my side. Everything just came to me natural.
Yes.
It's like this was my destiny. Yes, I was sad about the blindness, but tell you, sometimes I forgot because the way I move, I forget that I'm blind sometimes.
Yes. Looking back in your mind's eye, do you believe that this is where you should have been, given the situation of the wrong medication and that whatever else that you chose on the other path in terms of the culinary arts, it would not have been as successful as being a massage therapist?
I don't want to question nature and said, why me? Why not me? Because when I look back on my life being a chef and also was attending training to be a nurse, I don't know what type of nurse I would be, but I can say I'm an extraordinary massage therapist.
There are many young women, young girls in particular, who have dreams, great dreams to become successful, but at some point have the doubt, and they don't feel as if they can be as triumphant as they possibly can. What kind of advice would you give to those people to live their dream and get them to where they ought to be?
Sky's the limit. Use your challenges as a stepping stone.
We've been talking about ways to help others, especially during the Christmas season, but that wasn't all. We're sharing more ways you can help this season. So, ready? Let's go. Number 1, you can volunteer. It's a selfless act that will help to change and impact the lives of many people over the holiday season and beyond. 2, you can give blood. This is another great act of kindness, and it's not just for Christmas, but at any time of the year. If you're fit, if you're healthy, and if you're over the age of 17, you should be able to give blood. The experience is fairly quick, and it is safe. Number 3, help the elderly. Research shows that elderly persons can sometimes feel lonely, which can lead to depression and decline in physical health. This holiday season, if you have any elderly neighbors, even just starting a conversation with them can have such a positive impact. Can you think of any other ways you can show acts of kindness this holiday season? Share your thoughts with us on our social media pages, and let's start a conversation to effect the positive changes that will help to make our country the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. After all that learning, we put the final pause here for today's show. Thanks for sticking through the Jamaica Magazine journey. A refresher can be had through our YouTube channel. Also, be sure to visit our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more information. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Theodore Henry. See you soon.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.